Hey, welcome to H3 TV. Good afternoon. We meet with you every Wednesday to navigate disruption. I love to bring on a guest and talk about how do we stay hopeful, healthy, and happy as we navigate life's disruptions. So grateful that you're here joining us. Remember that we love to hear from where you're listening and ask us any questions during the show. Today, my guest is my friend Joe. Please help me welcome to the stage, Joe. Hey, Joe.
How you doing, Annie? Good to see the Pineapple Princess here today.
That's right. Great to see you and have you here. So tell my guests, who are you, Joe? Where do you live? What do you
Okay.
do? All the wonderful things about you.
Oh, okay. Well, my name is Joe Schmidt. I live in Bloomington, Minnesota. I was a longtime sportscaster in the Twin Cities. I recently retired from that. I'm a full-time professional speaker, as you are, member of National Speakers Association. We're both CSPs, which means we're certified and not rookies at this game. And I'm loving life.
Awesome. I love that. So good to spend time with you. I always like to come to our audience. We started H3 TV during 2020, and we realized people were navigating all sorts of disruptions, professional, personal, literal, and emotional disruptions. So I wanted to ask you, Joe, if you're willing, would you share a season in your life, one of the disruptions that you have faced in your life?
And there have been a lot of them when you think about it. It was I was thinking when you asked me to do this, I gave a toast at my daughter's wedding, and I said all the fatherly things they're supposed to say. And then I said something that I just kind of threw out there. I said, what happens in marriage and life is you never know what's going to hit you next.
Yeah.
And the good thing is you have each other to go through it. It was several months later we got hit with COVID, and it was like, who would have predicted it at that time that COVID would rule our life? So that's the big one. But we've all had little ones, everything from, a car accident to your car breaking down to a boss getting fired that you liked replaced by a boss you didn't like, to a health scare. I've gone through cancer. So there's always things that will happen. And what I've learned to do is realize that get over the fact that you can't change what has happened. You can't change that your car just got totaled. That's not going to change no matter how many times you replay it. It's going to take you a little bit to get there. But if your mindset is, okay, now what do I do from here? Okay, first of all, you thank your lucky stars that you're not hurt, or you thank your lucky stars that, that you have insurance, whatever the case might be. Think about what you can be thankful for, and then just try to figure out how to move on. Because, Annie, right, most disruptions are not your own fault. Most disruptions happen because of other factors. And so why blame yourself?
Yeah, and some disruptions are negative and some are positive. Sometimes people choose to disrupt their life by leaving a career, leaving a relationship, moving out of state, right? So I'd love, Joe, if you would just pick, we all face so many, and unfortunately, the older we get, the longer the list of disruptions we have. So what is one specific one, personal or professional, that you'd be willing to share? I really would love for my audience to just get to know you a little more and hear a little bit about your story.
I think probably the one that had the biggest impact on my life is my father got cancer when I was 25 years old, and I saw him die in 6 months.
Wow.
And my dad was my personal hero. My dad was everything I did. I wanted to make him proud of me, and I remember that. I remember how sad I was, and I remember how I thought, went through all the feelings that you have, including the ones where you say, why me?
Yeah.
And that's not a really good place to go.
That's right.
But it all kind of came back to me when all of a sudden I was writing a book. I have 3 books I've written. In one of the books I wrote, I was trying to think of a dedication. I said, I'd like to dedicate it to my dad. And then all of a sudden I thought the dedication should be to my dad, that I spent the rest of my life trying to make you proud of me. And so from the time I was 25 years old till now, I still, even though he can't hear me, he can't see me. I mean, hopefully he can spiritually, but everything I do, I try to make my dad proud.
You hear it in the back of your voice, that subtleness. And I just want to remind our listeners, I see we have lots of listeners today. If you want to weigh in and say hi, let us know where you're from, or ask questions to myself or Joe throughout, that's great. Joe, I know grief, and especially a hero, it's so like when they become your hero, it's always with you, right? And you're always thinking about it. So when you lost your dad at 25 as a young man, how did you stay hopeful? Because here's somebody you were trying to be like and was your role model, and then he was gone. And I know many of my listeners have a role model that they've had to bury too soon or before they were ready. What is some advice of how did you stay hopeful during that season when you were going through grief yourself?
Well, I think what I learned is two things. One, the world continues. You know, no matter what happens to you, no matter how disruptive your life is, I can remember it as plain as day. After my dad died, my world had stopped. And all of a sudden I looked out, and the UPS driver was delivering a package and kids were outside playing baseball. And I looked and I thought, life continues to go on. So I kind of allowed myself the time it took to grieve, but I also realized that, you know, I don't have to move on, but at some point you have to move forward. And I was able to get in that mindset pretty quickly. Although I will say that the hurt really never totally goes away. You know, there are still times that things happen in your life that you wish you could pick up the phone, and, you know, and then my mom lived a long life and I lost my mom, 7, 8 years ago. So it was, so I had her. So I was able to concentrate on her. And quite frankly, that was one thing that, the entire family had to do. So, a lot of times, I remember when my dad died, I had a sister who was 14 years old at the time. And my mom just got right back to work because she still had one more child in the house to raise, but I remember the other kids, the older kids, we all kind of decided we had to help mom. Yeah. We knew that dad played a role. We had to be there. We would never replace him, but we just had to be there to support him and so forth. So I think it's allowing yourself to be human, which means you're going to get mad. You're going to feel sorry for yourself. You're going to say, why me? You're going to scream at the moon. You're going to throw something. You get all that out of your system. And then you quickly get to, okay, here's what really has happened. I can't change the fact that my dad died. I can't change the fact that, when I get married, he's not going to be there. When I have my kids, they're not going to know the greatest grandpa, they ever would have known. So yeah. I kind of took that with me in other things that happened.
Yeah, I think you gave us 3. I always like to make it as small as possible for our listeners. So one thing you said was you allowed yourself to go through the process of grief. You also said you gave yourself time. And you also, I think such an important and kind of like a surreal feeling is the realization that life goes on, because your life feels like it stopped. And I remember when my brother died and people were like laughing and and I was like, do people not know what just happened? Right? Like, it's like, oh, but that reality check. And you were 25, you were young, but not so young. I'm curious, did you do anything intentionally or unintentionally, if you could share something you did to maintain your mental, physical, emotional health? I know a lot of our listeners are grieving lots of different things in their life. Do you have any tips of what did you do at 25 to take care of yourself in the midst of this very sad thing?
I was at the beginning of my career, so, I got busy with my career. There's no question I did that. But I also realized that, at that point, I think is when I realized you really have to work on your relationships with your friends and your family. I have, as a matter of fact, today, I talked to a buddy on the phone that we went to kindergarten together. So I have lifelong friends. I have college friends. I have friends at different stops in my career. I have a speech tomorrow in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. I'm having lunch with John Campbell. He was my boss in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. And he's on, one of the things I talk about is my Mount Rushmore of influence. So he's on my Mount Rushmore because he taught me how to be a professional. So I think if I have to look at why I work so hard at keeping and maintaining relationships, it probably goes back to that. Because the other thing that I saw it on the other side. I saw just how many friends my dad had. I mean, there was a line around the block at the funeral home in a small hometown of Seymour, and it was the impact. And another funny story about impact, and that's what I talk about, is somebody posted something a few years back. It was, I think one of my sisters must have posted a picture. It was my dad's, was supposed to be his birthday or whatever. And all of a sudden, people started chiming in. And I heard stories about my dad, 25, 30 years after he passed away, that I had never heard before, impact that he had 25 or 30 years ago. So I started thinking, why did he do that? Because he was really good at connecting with people, and Annie, you and I both know sometimes it takes a little more work to connect with people. Sometimes you have to be the person who picks up the phone, because if you sit and wait by the phone, they're not going to call. Well, it took me a while to get there, but I realized that's my role. That's not that person's role. And I just accept it. So the quicker you can learn acceptance probably helps you get over disruptions too.
I love that. I think, Joe, you said something really important there. And sometimes the thing that hurts my heart and is lacking in our world is we need a relational health. We need connection. We need community. And we need to be willing to be humble enough to take the initiative. There's some of us that are better inviting and initiating. There's some that's not. It's such a privilege, Joe, to be your friend, because I know you have a plethora of friends and we all have so much time, right? Time is finite. So I think one way you stayed healthy, and that's a great tip for our audience, is you took care of your emotional health by being intentional with your relationships, by making the effort, by surrounding yourself. And that's why you have lifelong friends. And that's why you do your beautiful piece on Who's Your Mount Rushmore, because you're showing people it's relationships. You know, people always say it's not your net worth, it's your network. And it's true. It's like, we need people to cheer us up. We need people to laugh with us. We need people to support us. You and I were in my mastermind for over 7 years together. I loved those relationships, learning from each other, supporting each other, and laughing together. So the third question I like to ask is, like, how did you find happiness or humor in your dad passing? I know that you have a great sense of humor. And so what did you do when you were young, and have you cultivated that over time? But I always think about, how do we find happiness and humor in the hard things in life?
Yeah. You know what? It's interesting, Annie, because I know you as a speaker, you're a great storyteller, but the stories are what's great. And the stories can make you laugh when you want to cry. And it's funny when you said when your brother died and you heard other people laugh. I remember the first time I laughed after my dad died, I felt guilty. I'm not supposed to be laughing.
Right.
But then we started telling stories, and then, you know, that's when the laughter came out. Remember the time Dad did this? Remember we were camping and Dad thought he could put up the tent, you know, whatever the case might be, you know, you start telling those stories, and that is, there's power in stories. And I always think that storytellers, the great thing about storytellers is they let people paint a picture of what it looked like. I talk about growing up in a bar, and my dad was a bartender, and people stayed in the bar longer when he was there because he made them feel like he was their best friend. And then I say he looked like a little Danny DeVito sitting behind the bar. So everybody in that audience is painting a picture of what that bar looked like. You can see it in your head. It's you know what it is, Annie? It's like, how many times have you read a book and then you've gone to the movie? What do you always say? The book was better.
That's right. Always.
Because you have painted the picture.
That's right.
You know what that scene looks like. You know what that character looks like. You know what he sounds like. And the director, for some reason, picked George Clooney to play that role, and it should have been me, you know?
Exactly. Why is that Julia Roberts? What's happening?
Yeah.
I love that. So it's in the reminiscing and in the story, right? In the reminiscing and the story. And I think something beautiful happens when people die, even not the greatest people in the world. You remember the good for the most part. We remember good about people. And I think that's a gift from above. Like, I'm always like, you let all the petty stuff go and you just remember the beautiful and the good. So Joe, what would you have told your 5 or 10-year-old self in preparation for losing your dad? What would have been wisdom that you would tell your younger self before that disruption? What do you wish you would have known?
I mean, that's really hard, but I guess when you look back at it, you always wish you had more time. So I wish I would have had more time. Back in the early days of broadcasting, before, you know, security and everything got crazy, I got my father-in-law an extra pass. I went to the Baseball Hall of Fame. I think it was when Kirby Puckett was inducted or whatever. And I got my father-in-law a pass. He was my associate producer. And then he went along and enjoyed the entire ride and all the stuff that we did. And I thought the entire time, I'm doing this vicariously because I wanted my dad there. But my father-in-law was there. So it was the next best thing. And a funny story happened out of that. And Roger's now gone, and we still tell the story. We're at this Hall of Fame baseball golf tournament, and all of a sudden we lost Roger. Like, we're ready to go. We interviewed all the players. We're going to do it.
Lost to death, like literally lost him there.
Lost him. Well, there he is sitting on a golf cart with Yogi Berra
Oh my,
talking baseball. And I was
oh,
like, only Roger could do that. So it's, it's just those things like that. I mean, cherish those memories, Annie, you talk so much about, joy and happiness. And the one thing I think you realize when you get older is when you get those moments of joy, relish them, recognize them, take time to realize this is really a good day. This is really a good time, because they always don't happen. But when that special moment happens, it's that when you have that, I know you're on the beach, but when you have that Jimmy Buffett moment on the beach where the sun's setting and
yeah.
you have your favorite cocktail in your hand and the dolphins go swimming by, cherish that moment.
Delight. For sure. Like, don't take it for granted. Don't take people and
Yeah.
moments for granted, because we don't know. We don't know our time, their time, when we get to have it again. So I agree. I think losing people, it's like the silver lining is it makes you appreciate those you still have, whether it's making date night or spending time with your kids, or in your case, your grandkids or your friends or whatever. It's so beautiful. Joe, I know you help people kind of just broaden their mindset and really look back at who's influenced them. Is there a story from people that you've spoken to and worked with where you met them, like here they were and they were kind of feeling discouraged that day, and then they heard you speak and then something transformed in them? What's a story of an experience like that you have with
Well,
an audience or client?
you get emails back once in a while that are very touching. Recently, I got one. So I wrote this. I have it right here because I just did a Zoom. I wrote this children's book with Joe Mauer called "The Right Thing to Do."
Yeah.
So a 79-year-old former teacher who volunteers at a school in Durand, Wisconsin, got the book. Somebody gave it to her, and she read it to the first, second, and third graders. And she knew, and she always felt for this one little girl who always sat by herself and was always alone. And anyway, she read the book to the class, and she wrote me this letter. It's beautiful. She read the book to the class, and the next day when she came back to volunteer, the little girl came up holding another girl's hands and said, "Mrs. Herman, I have a friend." I was like, that made it worth it, right there, And so guess what I'm doing? Next week I'm going and I'm reading to the class. I got Joe Mauer to cut a video to thank Mrs. Herman in front of the whole school. So it's just going to be a great moment. It's just like, you got to, you have to pay it forward when you get those opportunities. And that would be the joy thing. You know what, that great joy on that. Let's celebrate it. These moments don't come. When these moments come along, grab them by the neck and go for them.
Yeah, just hold on and cherish it, right? Go all in for this moment, which you're doing exactly that. Beautiful. Joe, I know all people pretty much are going through some sort of disruption. Not always dramatic. Sometimes it's little change. Sometimes it's a big change. But if you could bestow some wisdom, some encouragement on them, those people that are feeling hopeless and unhealthy and unhappy, and they're feeling like, why me, right? They're yelling at the moon right now because something in their life is hard. What encouragement would you want to give them?
I will say two things. The first one, I will quote my father-in-law, Roger, again, who I miss. At our wedding, we had our wedding reception. They had everybody write on a piece of paper their wedding advice. And Roger's was, "This too shall pass." And I thought that was wonderful. We have used that several times. But the other thing that I think is, when you're feeling bad, a way to get out of that funk is to do something nice for somebody else. And that's the time you pick up the phone. That's the time you acknowledge somebody, you value somebody, you thank somebody. You go to a restaurant and your bill's $10 and you give them a $10 tip. Just something that stirs you will make you feel good, or make somebody else feel good. It comes back at you 2 or 3 times.
Get out of yourself, go serve. So it just changes us, changes our perspective, Joe. Well, I love your story. I think you're an awesome guy, human being, speaker, human. I want to say one bad thing about Joe, though, before we finish. So we ran this mastermind forever and ever in my home. Once a month, we'd get together as speakers. And my one rule, I had one rule, Joe couldn't follow it, was leave your ego at the door. And Joe says, my ego is so big, it won't fit through the door. But that is not who Joe is at all. He is kind and funny and generous and loving. So I have to always tease him about that. But we we were just talking about going to spring training today. We always think about you when it comes to spring training for the twins down here. But thank you so much for being with me, Joe. I know my audience loves you. If they don't know you, they know a little bit about you now. What's the best way to connect with you if they want you to speak or they want to just get to know you better? Where can they find you,
Sure.
Joe?
I have a website, joeschmidt.com. Joe, it's SCHMIT, 1T, no D. I'm on LinkedIn and Facebook and all over like that stuff too. Not as much as the pineapple lady here, but I'm out there. You can find me if you look for me. Just look for an old slug that used to be a sportscaster in Minnesota.
He's not a slug. And his Mount Rushmore is pretty cool to think about who's influencing our lives and how. So yes, there is beautiful.
We're all ready.
Still look at him because he's ready to go. He's ready to get out there and speak and go see his friend. Also making that time intentional. You know, we go speak, but we try to think, who else can we meet with while we're there? Or who are we going to connect with or whatever it is. It's so beautiful.
You're the best at that, by the way. I learn from you when I'm with you at these events because, you know, it reminds me a little bit of Mel Robbins. You know, she has that 3-2-1.
Yes.
I have to do 3-2-1 to open up like you do at those places. You just do it naturally. I'm like going, should I talk to that guy? 3-2-1, go.
Well, we both love what we do, and it makes it easier to go talk to people because we love people, right? And we value relationships, and I value my friendship and my relationship with you. So I thank you for being here. I thank you to our listeners. Please put your questions and your comments in the chat. We love to hear where you're listening from, what you're taking away. I'm going to ask Joe to share a link to his website in the comments as well. But thank you, Joe, for being here. Thank you to our listeners. And we'll see you next Wednesday at H3 TV, where we believe you can be hopeful, healthy, and happy, even in hard disruptions. Take care. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you, Annie. Great stuff.